What is up, everyone? On this day in horror history, we are talking about the case of Mary Jane Kelly, who was the fifth and final of the canonical five of Jack the Ripper's victims. Mary Jane Kelly was married at around the age of 16 to a man named Davis, who was a coal miner, and the marriage would be short-lived as he died in a mining explosion. It was only 3 years into the marriage. This obviously left Mary Jane with very little. She had no way of supporting herself, so she turned to the lifestyle of prostitution when she went to London. And she had a French acquaintance over there who introduced her to the brothel lifestyle, a high-class brothel in the West End of London. Mary Jane became a favorite at this brothel, and she caught the attention of one client in particular, a man named Francis Craig, who wanted to take her to France. She agreed to go by some accounts, and she just didn't like the lifestyle, and she returned back to London. But other accounts say that she was actually the victim of human trafficking and escaped and returned back to London. In any case, she did return back, and she ended up on the East End of London, which, of course, in those days, in Victorian era, London was not a very good place to be. It was a slum. It was very dirty. It was a high crime area. There was a lot of substance and alcohol abuse and prostitution, things of that nature. The dregs of society, as they would call them, the Skid Row of London. So this is where Mary Jane ended up. It's also the place where Jack the Ripper used as his playground. And she met a man named Joseph Barnett. Joseph Barnett and Mary decided to shack up together. They lived in 13 Miller's Court, which was the infamous room where Mary was found. It was a very small room. It was just a single room with not much space for two people, let alone the prostitutes that Mary would allow to stay with them on different nights whenever they had no other place to stay. Joseph seemed, by all accounts that I know, he was very friendly to Mary, and they were amicable. And he also used to support her. He used to give her money, and but he just couldn't take not having enough space anymore. And this got them into fights with each other, and he ended up leaving. The last night that he would actually see her alive was on November 8th, the night before she died, where he visited her, and a friend of hers was there at the time. He and the friend went out for drinks, and it's said that he went home to play cards after the drinks and went to bed. Mary Jane Kelly was seen on the streets of London that night in the East End. She was seen with a man who some witnesses described as a man with ginger hair. He was a stout build, not too tall. And another man described him as very shady. He described his clothing to police as opulent. He said he didn't look like he belonged in the area. He also said that he didn't trust the man when he bumped into them, being that the man was trying to obviously hide his face from him with the brim of his hat and trying to turn away and not really allow him to take notice of him. But he did, and he gave a description to the police. And so that's the last time that anyone had seen Mary Jane Kelly alive. Shortly after that, Mary Jane took this man to her room at 13 Miller's Court, and a neighbor of Mary Jane's from upstairs who lived above her said that she could hear Mary Jane singing. This was something that Mary Jane had done regularly, especially when she got drunk. People knew her to sing songs whenever she started drinking. They also knew her to be a polite person when she was sober, a very pleasant person, but had a dark side when she became drunk. She became very hostile. She became very belligerent when she got drunk, they said, and this earned her the nickname of Dark Mary. So this was the last night, as I said, that anyone had seen her alive or heard of her, or heard from her, rather, and it was the next morning at around 10:45 that she was found. She was found by a man named Thomas Bowyer, who was the assistant of Mary Jane's landlord, John McCarthy. Thomas Boyer was sent there to collect money that Mary Jane was 6 weeks behind on, the rent money for staying in the room. And he knocked on the door to where there was no answer. Obviously, he looked in the keyhole to try to see if he could see anything. There was nothing there. He couldn't see anything. There was a break in the window, in the two windows that the room did have. In one of them, there was a small break in it that Mary Jane apparently used to use to open the door because she had lost her key. And there was a hole in the door in the window that some people say she put in there when she was drunk one night, that she used to close with rags and clothing that she would stuff into it to block out the draft. He did push this open. He pushed the rags and stuffing out of the way, and this is where he saw Mary Jane on the bed, murdered. This shocked him, and he brought it to the attention of John McCarthy, the landlord, who also went to take a look, and they informed police. Mary Jane was different from the other Ripper victims in a couple ways. One was that the other victims, while they were mutilated not nearly to the extent of Mary Jane. She was very extremely disfigured and mutilated by Jack the Ripper. And another thing is that she was killed inside, which some speculate is the reason that he took his time in performing his grisly work. The other victims were all killed outside on the streets and in alleyways, whereas Mary Jane took him into her room to engage in her business, and this afforded him the time and privacy to really go to town on it. And go to town he did. Mary Jane was completely disfigured by this maniac. He cut off her eyebrows, her nose, her cheeks, and her ears from her face, and her breasts were removed. One was stuffed under her head, and the other was stuffed under her right foot. Don't know if there's any significance to that, if there's any meaning to it, or if he was just putting it in random places. He did eviscerate her. She was cut from sternum to groin, and she was just had organs taken out. Her intestines were wrapped, draped over her body on the bed, and her legs and her thighs and her pubic area were all just completely shredded. The flesh was completely cut off to the bone, literally, and it was put on a desk that was in the room. After Mary Jane Kelly's death, the killings that are thought to be connected to Jack the Ripper stopped. As I said, she was the last of the 5 canonical victims. There might have been others, no one knows, but these are the ones that are actually attributed to the Ripper. And it's speculated on, why it stopped was maybe he ended up dying, maybe he fled the country, or maybe he was in jail. For whatever reason, Mary Jane Kelly would be the last canonical victim of Jack the Ripper. And that happened November 9th, 1888, on this day in horror history. And that's going to be all for this one. Hope to see you next time. Please leave a like, subscribe. Take care.